Yeah, yeah, yeah. Roberta in the truth zone, mic hitting raw. Spotlight shining, she exposing the flaw. Debunking the myth, breaking their facade. This is Glass City, respect the squad. On these NYC blocks where the skyline flex big. Roberta Glass slicing lies with a truth rig. Innocence fraudsters, your stories unravel. She's a map through the madness of gritty gravel. Glass don't bend and facts don't break. She's a storm that's called, you feel the quake. Exposing tales stitched with crooked seams. Justice in the lens, shattered fake dreams. Screams about killers, painted heroes in disguise. She burning propaganda with fire in her eyes. No glamour for the guilty, she call it straight. She backs victims, the voice stay away. Stats and receipts, no spin, no clutter. Cold cases whisper, she cuts through the mutter. Truth's her tempo, don't confuse the beat. She's standing for the real while you taking a seat. True crime's a block, facts the artillery. Spinning those lies, yo, she checks that misery. Tabloid tales get smashed, no time to play. She's glass hard, break the false and save the day. True crime's a block, facts the artillery. Spinning those lies, yo, she checks that misery. Tabloid tales get smashed, no time to...
Okay, here we go. Happy Tuesday, everybody. How is everybody doing? Let's check in with the chat. Hello, Mia Wallace. Hello, Maestro. Thank you for holding down the fort and moderating. I appreciate it. Hello, Barb, 212 New York. She always has great comments. How you doing, Barb? Hello, Melanie. Hello, Carmelo Riley. Hello, Dark Side of the Moon. Hello, Amina. Hello, Riverdale Pilates. Long time no see. Hello, Blue River. Okay. So I'm talking about today is the slaughter of Rob Reiner and his photographer wife, Michelle. In their home, they were found on this Sunday at around 3 Pacific time by their daughter, Romy. Nick, and immediately Romy knew who killed them. She immediately pointed out her brother, Nick Reiner, who had a long history of substance abuse. Sounds like opiate addiction was his main issue, and he also, did everything else. Was an IV drug user. And she said, my brother is dangerous. He's dangerous. So, and immediately he was arrested. There is new information about his arrest. The police put it up on their Instagram. And then there's new information about the redaction of the police photos of his arrest, which is also very interesting. All we're going to talk about today. But the big news, he was supposed to appear in court today. So there's a lot of big news around this. We've learned more about the crime scene, that they were killed, of course, the coward's way, while they were in bed, thinking asleep. So you would think that this would have happened Saturday night. And we heard, of course, that he was at Conan O'Brien's Christmas party with his parents, causing a scene. People said he looked under the influence. So a little bit more information about that Nick Reiner looked under the influence. He was going up to people, making them uncomfortable, asking them if they were famous or not. I'm sure there were a lot of famous people at that party. He also got into an altercation. Let me see if I can pull this up, with comedian Bill Hader. At the Christmas party. So this was reported by the New York Post, is staying on this story like crazy. Nick Reiner stormed off after getting into a tiff with comedian Bill Hader at Conan O'Brien's Christmas party. Rob Reiner's troubled son, Nick reportedly stormed off in a huff after a tiff with comedy heavyweight Bill Hader at Conan O'Brien's Christmas party, which left other guests concerned. Nick, who is accused of slaughtering his filmmaker dad and his mom, it's said that their throats were slashed. We don't know if there's any other kind of knife wounds, if this was one of these. Usually what we see in parricide crimes is a kind of overkill. So it's a really personal crime. The resentment has just been under the surface for so long, and we see the resentment in the way and the attitude towards the victims with the way that they're killed. So I would expect that it wasn't just these knife wounds on the throat, but we don't know. So Nick, who is accused of slaughtering his filmmaker dad and his mom in their Brentwood home sometime between Saturday night and Sunday afternoon, interrupted Hader at the holiday bash. An eyewitness told NBC News when the SNL alum told Nick Reiner that he was in the middle of a private conversation. The source said Nick just stood there and stared before storming off. So people also heard Nick Reiner and Rob Reiner arguing loudly at this party before they left. At least Rob and his wife Michelle left. Some partygoers were unsure if Nick Reiner left with them. Nick attended the star-studded event with parents Rob and Michelle, where the trio was reportedly got into a very loud argument, possibly because Nick was back on drugs and refusing yet another go at treatment. So I've heard he did 17 rehabs, and I've also heard 18 rehabs. But if you listen to his interviews, and he did a few on the Dopey podcast, which is a podcast about drugs and other dumb S. It's taped in New York. You can hear that he's been to sober living. He's done them all, and we're going to play some of his one of his appearances on that podcast today, later on. So possibly because Nick was back on drugs and refusing yet another go at treatment, the 32-year-old has openly discussed his battles with opiates and stimulant drugs in various interviews. Once estimated that he had been into rehab at least 18 times since the age of 15. They had an argument at Conan's holiday party, and Rob had been telling people that they're scared for Nick and scared that his mental state was deteriorating. So this is something that is being pushed in the press, some kind of mental illness, but any kind of diagnosis has yet to be disclosed. And there was a press conference today by DA Nathan Hochman, who took over from who won the election, won the election. Something that I was very happy about, from the very pro-criminal George Gascon. And he gave a press conference. We're going to look at it in a little bit, but he just said that any information about his any kind of psychiatric diagnosis will come up in the pretrial hearings. So Nick Reiner was supposed to appear in court today, and I hate to be bearing the lead here about his new attorney, but he did not appear because he has to get medically cleared. And they say that's a process that everyone has to go through. I would think if he was correctly identified as being on drugs, he's probably in detox. And I would think that California, Los Angeles jails actually do help you along medically with that kind of detox. Other states, not so much. But I would think that they said he can't appear in court because he's in no condition to appear in court. But he has hired criminal lawyer Alan Jackson, who has represented Harvey Weinstein, Kevin Spacey, just to name a few. He's a very expensive lawyer, which brings up the question, who's paying for it? And this is something that I saw in Marty Tankliff's case. I did an episode called Did Keith Raniere, who's the guru of Nexium cult, did Keith Raniere's lawyer, who was Marty Tankleff, kill his parents? That's what the episode is called. He got his conviction for killing his parents, Arlene and Seymour Tankleff, overturned on a technicality, but his defense was paid by his inheritance. So did Alan Jackson, either he's doing this pro bono for the publicity, which I don't know, doubtful, maybe it's possible, or Nick Reiner has offered him some of the insurance money from that will come, excuse me, back. Let me correct that. His inheritance money. I don't think he's going to get any insurance money. His inheritance will pay for his defense. And Alan Jackson is in my opinion, an innocence fraud lawyer. The way that he represented Karen Reed was not by lawyering in court. It was by lying to the court, and I'll show you proof of that in a second. But it was also by creating a lying narrative in the media, in our complicit and compliant media, and via blogger Aidan Turtleboy Carney. And he was successful in getting Karen Reed acquitted of the most serious charges in that case, where she was accused and ultimately acquitted, I feel wrongfully acquitted, of killing her police officer, John O'Keefe, by reversing into him and clipping him and leaving him to die in a blizzard. They created a conspiracy narrative that would have had to have involved anywhere from, depending on who's telling it, 50 to 70 people. They had an argument at Conan O'Brien's holiday party, and Rob had been telling everyone they're scared for Nick and scared that his mental state was deteriorating. So they're going to push in the media this idea that he was somehow, he may have a schizophrenic reason of his insanity defense. They may continue to push that he had some kind of trouble. They may go for autism, post-traumatic stress disorder. These are the kinds of things we see for people that I have identified, and other people have clearly identified as an antisocial personality, otherwise known as a psychopath or a sociopath. He seems to lack a full range of emotions. That's just my observations from watching a ton of interviews and listening to a ton of interviews with him. He lacks any kind of remorse, refusal to take responsibility, seems to get bored often, seems to crave high stimulus. They were both found with their throats slit in a grisly scene that could only be described as the actions of a madman. I don't think he was mad, the outlet reported. There is a percentage of our population, and it's usually the people I talk about in these some of the most heinous crimes, who are antisocial personalities. But that doesn't mean that something else isn't going on. We'll find out. I may be wrong. There may be some other kind of, or I may be right, and there may be some psychiatrists who will testify for him that something, that he was struggling with something. It's certainly a mitigating factor when you struggle with mental illness in these kind of cases, meaning that it will get you a lower sentence. Okay, so back to, we're going to go into some of his arrests, but let's get into Alan Jackson, who Alan Jackson is, if you don't know. Alan Jackson, it was Karen Reed's lawyer, and in that case, he had lied. He and his co-counsel, David Yannetti et al., and Alan Jackson's co-counsel, Elizabeth Little, and Robert Alessi, to a lesser degree, he came on later, but he still lied to the court so much that they had to be reprimanded by a very former defense attorney, very defense-friendly judge, Judge Cannoni. So take a listen. So basically, she's going to use very soft words, lack of candor with the court, repeated. She uses a lot of euphemisms, but what she's saying is you repeatedly lied to the court. And not only did they lie to the court, they lied in the first trial that ended in a mistrial. They lied to the jury. He elicited perjured testimony in that trial with no consequences. So you would think that he's emboldened to do it some more. Take a listen. Coverage. Then the introduction of the investigation to the... So hold on one second. I was reading a little bit through this. Hold on. This is the judge's findings.
So I think I told counsel before that I had reviewed. So first we had full hearing from counsel. I heard from the lawyers. I heard from Mr. Alessi on behalf of the lawyers. I've read the transcripts. I've listened to the sidebar conference and read that transcript. And I've certainly read the pleadings. So based on all the evidence, I conclude that there has not been the candor required of all lawyers has not been demonstrated here. I find that there have been repeated misrepresentations made to the court by defense counsel.
So that's Alan Jackson. Repeated misrepresentations. What's a misrepresentation? It's a lie. They lied to the court. They lied to the jury. They lied to the public over and over again. And she just discovered it before the second trial. I mean, come on. It was so... The criminal behavior, in my view, by the defense in the Karen Reed trial was shocking. So that will give you a little bit of idea of who he is. He also intimidated Kevin Spacey's, one of Kevin Spacey's alleged victims, by insisting on getting his cell phone, like getting all this embarrassing material essentially from his cell phone. And the charges were dropped because he wouldn't participate. Wesley loves Octoberfest, says, I'm going to be away until the new year. Oh no, where are you going, Wesley? So I'll have to top off the cat tour fund with an extra today. Thank you, Wesley. Always doing the heavy lifting, the super chats. I appreciate it. Oh, this is a small channel, and I do rely on the super chats to keep it afloat, so I appreciate it. And so much so that he was so fraudulent that I actually made a little song about Alan Jackson in that case. And there were pictures of Alan Jackson that showed that he had or hinted at, one could interpret those pictures as Alan Jackson having an inappropriate relationship, a big no-no for lawyers, with his killer client, Karen Reed. All this I talk about in this song. Take a listen. Okay. So those who said that he's going to blame the police, all this I think is very curious. So there was one, just, can I boot this? All right. So there was one very interesting story about the police originally put up pictures of his arrest. So he was arrested. So just to give you some information, the police found in his hotel room, but he wasn't found in his hotel room. I mean, to review, Rob and Michelle Reiner were found murdered in their bed, and the hotel room they found, and this may be an exaggeration, they say so much blood, but they did find some blood in his hotel room. How much, we don't know. They say it was covered in blood, that there was blood in the shower and blood. The troubled drug addict seemed tweaked out when he checked in, eyewitnesses told the outlet, but there were no, so tweaked is a sign that he was maybe on some kind of upper kind of drug, stimulant drug, but there were no visible signs he'd been in a violent confrontation. If I had to guess, it was a combination, I mean, this is just my guess, of opiates and some kind of upper drug, but there were no visible signs he'd been in a violent confrontation. The hotel shower was full of blood, and there were blood stains on the bed, sources told the outlet. The windows had also been covered with bed sheets, which is if you don't want your drug taking to be interrupted by daylight or other people. It hints to some paranoia. You don't want people looking in, and you want darkness. His pupils could have been dilated or not. LAPD homicide detective investigated the room on Monday. So it was in that state, but he was found, he took the subway, and he was found near a park. And the details of that, so the police put up pictures of that arrest of Nick Reiner, and then they took them down, which I think is pretty interesting. It was like almost as soon as Alan Jackson was announced as his lawyer on this case. So I'm just really curious who's paying for this. I mean, Alan Jackson is not cheap. I mean, I think Karen Reed got him for the bargain price of, I think it was around $250,000. But where's that money coming from? I would think that any money he made writing the movie that his father directed based on his troubles with substances called Being Charlie, which we could talk about. I just watched last night. Can talk about it in a minute, or a little while. I would think that this is all in a reaction to him hiring Alan Jackson, because Alan Jackson notoriously blamed the police for planning evidence and for their terrible conduct and practices. So these pictures where Nick Reiner is on the ground, if you're very anti-police and you're not thinking that, well, they're told he's dangerous and they're protecting themselves, could be utilized in his defense against the police. Nick Reiner, the 32-year-old son of liberal activists, like they don't want them to cement in the public consciousness, meaning they know Alan Jackson is going to use an innocence fraud campaign, not in court, because he's not a good enough lawyer to actually lawyer in court. He's a fraud, in my view, he's a fraudulent lawyer who does a media campaign, or what I'd call an innocence fraud campaign pre-trial, to poison the jury pool and it worked in Karen Reed's case. Nick Reiner, the 32-year-old son of liberal activist and famed director Rob Reiner, had been arrested and charged with the brutal murder of his parents. The LAP, and this is really interesting, that he was arrested by the Gang and Narcotics Division, published dramatic photos. So I guess they were expecting him to be holding dramatic photos of Nick handcuffed arrest on Instagram on Monday, but quickly deleted them without explanation. So to give you a little idea, here's another one. Here's another one with, I mean, you really can't see his face or anyone's face has all been blurred out by the PD. But those are the pictures. They took them down. Interesting, no? So there is that. The DA held a press conference. Let's take a look at that. So this is DA Nathan Hochman. He'll come on second in this press conference. Take a listen.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Josh. That's a big crowd.
2 minutes?
Less than 2 minutes. We're coming out right now. So, let's have Maria and John and Louise on this side. Great. And then LAPD on that side. Perfect. So this is going to be an update on the homicide investigation of Rob Reiner and Michelle Reiner. You're going to hear from the Chief of Police, Jim McDonald from the Los Angeles Police Department, and the District Attorney.
I'm sorry, he's the third person that comes on. My apologies.
Nathan Hochman. Just want to level expectations. We will allow some time for questions, but because of this is a preliminary investigation still, very active. It's being filed as we speak. There's not a lot we're going to be able to say right now. Also, if you would, please quote one question at a time so that we can hear the question and answer it appropriately. So if we could have that decorum in here. DA Nathan Hochman.
Oh, I was right the first time.
My name is Nathan Hochman. I'm the District Attorney of Los Angeles County. Today I'm here to announce that our office will be filing charges against Nick Reiner, who is accused of killing his parents, actor-director Rob Reiner, and photographer-producer Michelle Singer Reiner. These charges will be 2 counts of first-degree murder with a special circumstance of multiple murders.
So this is really important. If you know the history of DA Gascon, who was so pro-criminal, one of the things that DA Gascon did was he got rid of the department that notified victims when their loved one's killer was up for parole, to keep them out of the parole process because victims' voices are so powerful in parole hearings. The other thing he did was he got rid of what's called enhancements or special circumstances. So just to give you an idea, how do sentencing enhancements work? So sentencing enhancements bump up possible penalties the judge can impose on a crime. So if you do a crime with a gun, you'll get more time. Or if it's a hate crime, or prior convictions, gang crimes, bodily injury, financial loss that was incurred, all those things can be considered special circumstances or otherwise known as enhancements. So when DA Hochman, who beat DA, pro-criminal DA Gascon in the DA race, says that he's adding enhancements, it's really significant because this is something that Gascon worked to get away with, or special circumstances. It's a similar thing, just a different name for it.
He also faces a special allegation that he personally used a dangerous and deadly weapon, that being a knife. These charges carry a maximum sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole or the death penalty. No decision at this point has been made with respect to the death penalty. We have requested, and currently Nick Reiner is being held without bail. Now, in announcing these charges, I also want to announce that they're just that. They are charges. Charges are not evidence. Evidence is something that we will be presenting in a court of law to meet the standard of proof we meet in every criminal case, which is beyond a reasonable doubt, to 12 jurors who you'll unanimously have to find that we've met that standard to prove the charges we bring to court. Right now, with respect to the process, once the charges get filed this afternoon, Nick Reiner will be then brought to court. He is going through medical clearance, something that everybody who gets arrested and gets held in a Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department jail goes through. Once he is medically cleared, he will be brought to court to be arraigned on these charges. At that point, he will enter a plea of guilty or not guilty. Now, prosecuting these cases involving family members are some of the most challenging and most heart-wrenching cases that this office faces because of the intimate and often brutal nature of the crimes involved.
So here they have an issue because this is very much like the Menendez brothers case, where the victims' family members are related to both the accused and the victims. So will this end up being like the Menendez brothers case? Should he get something like life without parole, will they be advocating for his release? What we know, or what I observed from listening to so many interviews and listening to interviews with Rob Reiner and his son, and listening to so many interviews with Nick Reiner, is that he was very manipulative and seemed to get Rob Reiner feeling very remorseful about sending his son to rehab and insisting on boundaries and perhaps some tough love. His mother, Michelle, was quoted as saying, this is not a direct quote, but this is just paraphrasing, like, the experts told us that he was so manipulative and to not listen to him. But both Rob Reiner and Michelle Reiner said we should have just listened to our son and his needs. And what you see is a pattern of the son dictating his own rehabilitation or his own circumstances, despite having zero success with rehab and escalating a series of consequences and more troubling usage of substances.
Rob Reiner was a brilliant actor and director, an iconic force in our entertainment industry for decades. His wife, Michelle Singer Reiner, was an equally iconic photographer and producer.
Okay, I just want to thank Carmel O'Reilly. Thank you so much for the super sticker. I appreciate it.
Their loss is beyond tragic, and we will commit ourselves to bringing their murderer to justice. I want to thank LAPD Chief McDonnell, who is here today, along with Deputy Chief Alan Hamilton from the LAPD and LAPD Captain Scott Williams and the entire robbery homicide division, who literally has been working around the clock to gather the evidence that have led to the charges we're going to be filing today. Also from my office, I have Assistant District Attorney Maria Ramirez.
So there was criticism that Los Angeles has a robbery and homicide division and not just a dedicated homicide division, that they've had to combine these.
Ramirez. I have Director of Specialized Prosecutions, John McKinney. I have our Head Deputy of Major Crimes, Craig Hum. And I have the two prosecutors.
Oh, my Lord. John McKinney also ran for DA. He was my pick for DA before Hochman took the lead. He's a fantastic DA. So it looks like he might be involved in this case. Also, so John McKinney and Habib Balalin, who prosecuted Robert Durst, is going to take. I knew he was going to assign people who were really to prosecute this case, prosecutors who were really seasoned, and he picked some good ones. Habib Balalin was excellent in Robert Durst's trial. He did the closing argument. We can take a look at it if we have time.
Who will be leading the prosecution in this case. Assistant Head Deputy of Major Crimes, Habib Balalin, and Deputy District Attorney for Major Crimes, Jonathan.
So John McKinney was demoted in a retaliatory effort for speaking out against DA Gascon's pro-criminal policies. And there was a lot of lawsuits. He was not the only one. There was a lot of lawsuits against DA Gascon over these kind of retaliatory demotions. So glad to see him back where he belongs, prosecuting major crimes.
Chung. They will bring their decades of experience to holding this murderer accountable for his actions. At this point, again, you will hear in the media rumors, you will hear speculation, you will hear hearsay. What I'm asking everyone to do is to rely on trusted sources. If it doesn't come from the district attorney's office, from LAPD, from the coroner's office, or from the courtroom itself, and there's a good chance you are hearing misinformation. Because at the appropriate time, the actual evidence involved in this case will be presented in a court of law. So I ask for your patience until that is done. But again, please do not rely on rank speculation, rumor, or hearsay to believe that you understand anything about what went on in this case. I'd now like to turn it over to Chief McDonald.
Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you all for being here today. And it's with deep sadness that I address the tragic loss of Robert and Michelle Reiner. On December 14th, 2025, LAPD officers from our West Los Angeles division responded to a death investigation at the 200 block of South Chadbourne Avenue, which is in the Brentwood section of Los Angeles. Upon entering
Another famous murder happened in Brentwood, murder of Nicole Simpson. Of course, O.J. Simpson was accused and acquitted of that crime.
the residence, they discovered the bodies of Mr. and Mrs. Reiner. Detectives from our Robbery Homicide Division Homicide Special Section immediately initiated a comprehensive investigation. The evidence gathered led to the arrest of their son, Nick Reiner, who was taken into custody later that night without incident in the Exposition Park section of our city. Today, the Los Angeles County District's Attorney's Office has formally filed charges against Mr. Reiner for the murder of his parents.
And Ron Goldman, I should mention. So he's formally getting a murder charge. They had held off on that for a little while.
This case is heartbreaking and deeply personal, not only for the Reiner family and their loved ones, but for our entire city. We extend our deepest condolences to all of those who were affected by this tragedy. I want to take a moment to recognize and thank our criminal justice partners, the District Attorney's Office led by D.A. Hochman, and everyone who worked tirelessly on this investigation. Their swift action, professionalism, and commitment to justice have been instrumental in bringing clarity and accountability to this case. The LAPD remains steadfast in our mission to protect life and uphold justice. We will continue to support the Reiner family and ensure that every step forward is taken with care, dignity, and resolve. Thank you.
So let's hope that's true. Let's hope this was done by the letter and they didn't think they had an overwhelming case like they did with Karen Reed, or the police thought that, I initially thought that Nick Reiner might plead out, but now he's hiring Alan Jackson, shows that he's not going to plead out, that he's going to fight this. And if I had to guess when he finally does show up in court, I would think that he's going to put in a non-guilty plea, and we're going to go to trial over this, and a lot of money is going to be spent. I mean, and I would think it would be the victim's money. I would think that any money that he got from his screenplay, etc., and that was like, what, 2015, is long gone now. By now, he checked into the hotel where there was the blood in the shower and on the sheets. I would buy a credit card, and I would think that would be connected to his parents' account. I mean, he was like a 32-year-old perpetual child. He never had a job. He never graduated high school, never got his GED. And and I know there's a lot of people saying this is bad parenting, but I'd argue what happened with the other two kids did very well. And there had been, according to the neighbors, a previous instance of violence. He had been violent with his parents before. So seems like, how do you handle let's just say that I'm right and he is an antisocial personality. How do you handle a severely drug addicted child with an antisocial personality disorder as a beloved celebrity, American celebrity? If you kick them out, they get home, you worry. I don't know you worry that the child's going to die, right? So we'll see. Not that he couldn't die under their roof. My understanding is he was living under their roof. That's what's been reported. It may be erroneous. I think there's a lot of information that still has not been put in the public domain.
We'll now take some questions. Yes, right here in the front.
Mr. Attorney, could you talk about why you feel this case rises to special circumstances?
So special circumstances is a situation where one of the enumerated factors that lead to elevating in some ways a first-degree murder case to a special circumstance first-degree murder case occurs. One of those special circumstances is called multiple murders. Here we have two, and it qualifies under the definition of multiple murders to allege the special circumstance in this particular case.
Chief,
I saw
how
over
was
here.
Nick Reiner found, and was there?
So it's not just that he multiple murders. My understanding is also that he used a knife, that kind of deadly weapon, they call it.
Any evidence on him indicating a crime, and did he say anything?
Yeah, he was found with good, solid police work, investigative tools used by robbery, homicide, and gang and narcotic division detectives with the U.S. Marshal Service Task Force involved as well.
So the U.S. Marshal Service had to track him down. I would think that they tracked him down by his cell phone, but that's not disclosed here.
So we're thankful for the work that was done. I won't go into talking about what was found or anything that could potentially taint the investigation.
Chief, a follow-up question,
Yeah.
sir.
Oh, I missed that the first time around. And so it sounds like something might have been found. Did he flee with the murder weapon? Did he flee with something else? But were substances found, I would think, if he had any left in his hotel room. Sounds like they found something in the hotel room or on him, either one.
Given Nick's history of drug use, was there any indication that he was under the influence at the time of this crime?
No, thank you again. That's another question I can't touch.
And following up on that, is there any?
Yeah, I would think that he's in detox right now in jail. This is just my guess. Take it with a grain of salt, but they say it's that everyone has to be medically cleared, but I would think his medical clearance would take longer. So, i.e. that he's not medically cleared, because you can't have someone show up in court and put in a plea not in their right mind. And they could argue, I put in that plea when I was going through detox. And so, yeah, I think they're going to have to wait until he's detoxed to show up, have him show up in court.
Evidence of mental illness in his background.
Yeah, you can talk for that.
I'm sorry, please repeat the question.
Is there any evidence of mental illness in his background beyond the?
So this is something that everybody's saying he was so, they'll say euphemisms like he was troubled, that Rob Reiner had worried about his mental deterioration. But it sounds like he was always a problem. We'll go in a little bit more, has been released about his relationships with his siblings, especially his sister Romy.
Addiction?
The evidence, any evidence, if there is any, of mental illness for his background will be coming out in the hearings that will occur. We anticipate, again, after the arraignment, the process will go through the normal process a case like this goes through. At the appropriate time, if there is evidence of mental illness, it will be presented in court and in whatever detail the defense seeks to do that. Yes, right here.
Are you anticipating any kind of significant delay in bringing this case to trial on the basis perhaps that they have to go through a significant psychological evaluation, which would also give your people what they need in order to background what might describe?
They said, is there going to be delay because of a psychological evaluation? I mean, it's really low. I don't know if you guys can hear that question. So you can see the press is really pushing. They always do. They're trying to really downplay this idea of a personality disorder, something, so it's just antisocial personality disorder, because there is no cure. And Americans don't like that. Americans like the idea that you can, so American to go from like that, you can go from one thing to the other, meaning you can go from a very low state to like you can cure it. Like it's just or something to make him a victim. He's an autistic. He's schizophrenic. He just snapped. According to everyone, I mean, the theme that comes up, if you've been researching this case, is his intense resentment towards his parents. And he had talked about on the Dopey podcast before, more recent Dopey podcast, that he had gone on a bender of stimulant, in IV injecting stimulant substances, and that he had wrecked his parents' guest house. And because they wanted him out. I would think that they would have wanted him out of the house until he cleaned up, and his attitude towards, and this is what you get from the movie Being Charlie, where in the whole movie, all the rehab people, most of them are villains or clueless. It's very critical of the whole industry, but not in a smart or sophisticated way, just in a kind of very juvenile way. The movie, you could tell he was very young when he wrote it in his 20s. Is that he feels like he's entitled to spend his parents' money on drugs and live in their home and have everything, and that rehab is stupid. And if you don't, and he said at one of the interviews I listened to, he said, well, I was just waiting, just cleaning up so I could go home, be sent home to his parents' house and use more. I mean, there's just, and even when he did lay off the harder substances, he was still using, it sounded to abusing other what are considered softer substances. So let's hear what Nathan Hoxman says to the question, is there going to be a psychological evaluation, and will that delay the trial?
We don't anticipate any significant delay more than is involved in a first-degree murder case with special circumstances. These are some of the most serious charges that a DA's office can bring against anyone. And we anticipate that the discovery that we will produce to the defense will be robust. It will be very involved. They'll want adequate time to review it. They'll want to go through every single factor that they can ascertain in the defense of Mr. Nick Reiner. So again, this will proceed along the tracks that many of the first-degree murder cases proceed. Do I anticipate it being particularly fast? No. I anticipate it being very thorough. Yes, right here.
Cause of death and time of death, can you share any information about that?
We are not at this time. Yes.
So he's been charged with two charges of first-degree murder, and Nathan Hochman says he's going to ask the family if they want the death penalty. You would think if Rob Reiner's children had the same politics as their father, that they're going to say no, they don't want the death penalty. Even if they ask for the death penalty in California, it's pretty much a joke. I mean, I don't know when they've actually gone ahead with the execution in California, or especially Los Angeles. I mean, it would just be giving him better circumstances in prison, awaiting this, and he'd have actually, there's more anti-death penalty lawyers and organizations that would all fight to overturn his conviction. So in this case, I just don't think it's realistic to ask for the death penalty. It's just, I can't imagine it ever going forward.
Yes, right here.
Did the members of the Reiner family help with your investigation so far, and did they provide any information or assistance which led to Nick being arrested?
Let me defer to the chief on this.
Good. Hi, I'm Deputy Chief Alan Hamilton, Chief of Detectives. We don't have any specific information we're going to release at this time regarding the family's information they provided.
They are being so careful about what they release. And did you hear him say, because he knows that Alan Jackson does innocence fraud campaigns pre-trial via our complicit and compliant media. It's like, don't believe anything unless it comes from us. So don't believe anything that if Alan Jackson starts getting a blogger to blog about how Nick Reiner, and I just saw at least one or two posts on X of people already saying it's a conspiracy and he was the fall guy or a patsy. So they're being very careful about what they put out. So they can't say that this was one of their favorite things in an innocence fraud campaign is to say it's a tunnel vision investigation. Not that all the evidence led to one suspect, but just that, especially when there's no forced entry in the home, there's no way. I mean, if you look at that home, it's got huge cement, gate, very high wall around this mansion. It would be, I would think, with their security, it would be really hard to get in.
As we move forward, that information will be discussed in the appropriate venue, which will be the court.
Yes, in the front here.
Sorry for the chief. Can you talk anything more about just not the condition that Nick was in when he was arrested? Was he a resident? Was he walking around? Was he observed by people in the neighborhood? Like anything else you can tell us about that?
So specifically, he was arrested in a public area, in the Exposition Park area near the University of Southern California campus. He was approached by the officers and he was arrested without incident. There were no indications that there was no indication that he was going to resist or anything like that. He didn't flee or anything like that. He was taken into custody without issue, and he was transported to our police headquarters facility.
Take a question back there. Yes. He has been alleged, one of these special allegations is that the murder was committed with a deadly weapon or a knife. As to where and
So special allegations, does that mean that's an enhancement? Am I wrong about that being an enhancement or not? I'm not sure.
And how the weapon was located or will be located, that will actually be evidence we'll present in court.
We got two more questions.
Let me take a question over here.
Give us a timeline of when you think the murders occurred, because now we know that there was an altercation on Saturday night at a party. Do we know that this happened Saturday night or maybe Sunday morning?
I'll defer to the chief on this one.
Yeah, we don't have I'm sorry, we don't have that kind of specificity yet. We're waiting the coroner to be able to try and determine as best they can at this point.
Well, you would think logically, although it doesn't have to be necessarily. It could be a rare situation where they were in bed taking a nap, but you would think that it would have to be within the hours that they went to bed after a party, like 11 or midnight, to whenever they were, till Sunday morning, or the wee small hours of Sunday morning, or the early morning hours of Sunday morning. You would think that that would be the time that this crime occurred. Just logically, having, if you don't know, they were found in bed. So he did this like the coward that he is when they were, more defenseless.
Time of death.
Chief, where were the victims found? Can you say where the victims were found?
Yeah.
Just exactly the way Marty Tankliff did it too. He set his alarm early so he could go in and ambush his parents while they were in bed. His adoptive parents, Arlene and Seymour Tankliff.
We'll take the question back there.
Yes, can you tell us who called 911?
Chief, if you
We
know.
got a radio call from fire department.
I can. Okay, so in terms of how the Los Angeles Police Department became aware, it was a request from the Los Angeles Fire Department, who responded to the scene first. We responded to their request for assistance at the scene of the incident. Our initial West LA officers that responded determined that a crime had occurred, and they immediately notified our robbery homicide division. They responded, and they have taken over the investigation since that point.
Thank you, everybody.
So what was reported was that it was the sister, Romy, who strangely called her brother her best friend years before. So this is from OK Magazine. Robin Michelle Reiner's daughter, Romy, called brother Nick her best friend years before her sibling allegedly slashed their throats. Steve Zedek of The Hollywood Reporter called the declaration in a moving essay, so she told Steve Zetchik of The Hollywood Reporter, and he wrote a moving essay published on Monday, December 15th, one day after Romy found the bodies of her parents at their Brentwood, California home. So there's an earlier picture. There's the eldest brother, Jake. Nick Reiner is the middle child, and Romy is the youngest child. Rob Reiner also has an adopted daughter. He adopted Penny Marshall's daughter when he was married to her for 10 years. Stephen wrote in the piece about having a dinner with the Reiners during their 2015 Toronto Film Festival, where the family was promoting Being Charlie, a film Rob directed that Nick, 32, co-wrote about his experiences with addiction and homelessness. I looked at Romy, the Reiner's daughter. How did she feel? This is my best friend, and I was there for all of it, Stephen wrote. That's what she said. It's weird, but good to see on the screen, Romy added. Steve said the Hollywood director's younger child struck him as someone deeply admiring of her brother, but also noted she seemed a little tired of explaining his behavior to her parents, to everyone. And there's a picture of Romy Reiner told the cops her brother should be a suspect and that he's dangerous. Nick was arrested that same evening after going missing for hours. So that's a little bit about that. But just to give you an idea of who's trying this case. So this is Habib. Let me just remove those. This is Habib Balian, who great prosecutor did the closing argument in Robert Durst's trial. So they're giving some of their most senior prosecutors this case. And let me just pull up. And also John McKinney, who ran for DA and lost. It was my pick, of course. Somebody who lost, but hold on one second. Why can't I add this? Oh, maybe I'm in the wrong thing. Okay, here we go. Sorry, let me just pull up a picture of John McKinney so you can see. There. So that's John McKinney. So he's also going to be the prosecutor on this case. It's going to be, I hope it's televised. It'll be a fascinating trial if that's the case. I mean, what awesome prosecutor, according to me, very, not that I'm a fan of any lawyer all that much, but just as far as prosecutors go, I think it would be a fun one to watch with those at the helm up against Alan Jackson, who's very Hollywood and showy in court. Let's see, to give you an idea, let's listen to a little bit of Nick Reiner on the Dopey podcast. Here he's asked about, does he hang out with the Hollywood crowd? Take a listen.
Did you run with the high-powered, rich, party Hollywood types?
No.
That was never your thing?
No, because they didn't want to get down like that, you know. They
drink and club and
they
bottles.
drink, you know, sip some Coke and stuff like that. But there's no huge parties. The people that are doing the kind of stuff I was doing, it's, you know, there were, you know, I'm not going to say who they were, but there were kids that I grew up in the same sort of situation that would meet this certain, you know, the
Were
same
you
end.
Southern California? Is that where you grew up? In L.A. or something?
Santa Monica.
Santa Monica?
Yeah.
Well, that's how you ended up at Promises. But Promises Malibu?
Yeah, like
Don't they promise to get you off of drugs?
No, that's Passages.
That's Passages. With it was funny because like
He's like a little expert in rehab. So I looked up how much, did I take it down? But it was like how much Promises Malibu rehab is, the cost of it. And it for a month of, 28 days rehab there, they say it's in the past it cost $33,000 to $49,000 per month, offering luxury amenities. Through the original facility was on sale in 2023 for $20 million. Note that the center itself is now permanently closed. Okay. So there is no more Promises Malibu, but that's where it was at. I mean, a very expensive, cushy rehab. Let me see if I can.
the more and more I went to rehab, the more hardcore they got. So like at first it was the fluffy Malibu ones, and then it turns into like,
Alina Lodge.
The Alina Lodge, Burning Tree.
The first fancy one I went to was Sierra Tucson, and then after that I insisted to go to New.
Yeah, it's definitely old phase because it's no longer in existence. Airdrie, I can't pull up current fees because it's closed.
Newport Beach, and I went to this place, Oceans Recovery.
You insisted.
Yeah, well, they wanted to send me to this place called Grey Wolf in Washington, and which is probably a much better place. But I was like, everybody's going to Newport. Like, I want to go to Newport.
You're such a piece of shit.
I actually was such a little
on that.
Yeah, I was like,
when you're high on, you say so much, and then when you're like off of it all, you're like, oh, why did I agree to do?
Well, I wasn't even high. I was in my primary treatment, and and they were like, everybody was going to aftercare in Southern California, and they were trying to send me to the state of Washington, and I threw a little hissy fit, like a spoiled brat with my parents, like, I want to go to the beach. And they sent me to the beach.
And did you get sober after that?
No, I robbed a veterinarian for drugs and then went to jail. And then I started the real intent. Then it was Impact and Alina Lodge.
So the beach doesn't get you sober?
The beach didn't work for me.
The beach
for this
didn't
person.
Get this addict.
For this addict over here.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Fucking hell. What was I thinking? All dopey stories aside, like, as always, I feel pangs of guilt And like,
this is the dopey one though. This is part 2 dopey one. Are you gonna get all serious on us right now?
Don't get serious
Yeah,
on us, because here's the real thing. When you have a conversation, what are the conversations behind closed doors in rehab when you're waiting for the staff to leave? It's this.
That's what this is.
That's what the show is.
This is the meeting after the meeting, like we like to say.
That's not what they say at the meeting after my meeting.
They say it during the meeting.
You know what they say at the meeting after my meeting? Oh, are you going to work now? Yeah, I'm going to work.
Well, you go at 7 a.m.
Yeah, there's very few stories at the meeting after my meeting.
What was the first time you shot dope?
Yeah, what was the first time you shot dope?
Interesting. First roommate I ever had in a rehab.
So that sounds like it's really hard to distinguish sometimes the voices. So there's these 2 podcasters. One is Dave, who still runs this podcast, and the other one is Chris, who, while doing this podcast about really about recovery, or saying he was in recovery, OD'd and died many years back, tragically. So he's chiming in here too. And then there's Nick. But it sounds like he said, like, I dictated to my parents that I wanted to be at the beach. No? Was that Chris or was that Nick? I thought that was Nick, but I may be wrong. It could have been Chris who OD'd there. But he's going to blame the rehab for starting to use more serious drugs. Like, if he had never been sent to rehab, he wouldn't have gotten the idea that he should, you'll see a pattern of refusing to take responsibility for any of his behavior in all of his interviews on this same podcast, the Dopey podcast. Take a listen.
Time I went to rehab, I never.
What'd you go to rehab for?
It was sort of one of those bad, wrong places, wrong time. Like, I was at this kid's house, and to make a long story short, we all took a lot of pills, some Percocet, Xanax kind of stuff.
So this is at 15. So he's saying it was bad circumstances. He just got caught wrongfully after, he's making it sound like he just did it once. Like, as if any parent wants to send your kid to rehab for the first time at age 15. This is the number 1 of 18 rehabs.
It was all party there, and one thing, I took some pills, obviously, and one thing led to another, and it's me, this other dude, his sister, and we went up to his room, and he's like lying face down on his bed, and like not like passed out up, like not responsive up.
Yeah.
And like, we're kids. I'm 14, 15. I don't know what the hell to do.
Yeah.
And like that whole classic thing, if I call the cops, I get in trouble.
Yeah.
And so luckily his parents came home within a minute of that happening. They rushed him to the hospital.
Yeah.
So his friend almost died, if you're listening. It was just one of those things. He was just in the wrong place, and his friend almost died, and he didn't know what to do. He was totally, at 15, he didn't know to call 911 because he didn't want to get in trouble. So he prioritized saving himself over. But luckily, this kid's parents came home and rushed him to the hospital. But unfortunately, it meant that he had to go to rehab. It sounds like he's trying to make an argument that it was wrongful and an overreaction, and that all his problems stemmed from being sent to rehab wrongfully, because that's where he got the idea to do heavier drugs. Take a listen. This is just can hear the seething resentment for his parents and the following.
I think they pumped us up. I'm not sure what happened, but I'm standing outside, and this woman who says she's in AA, she's been sober for a while, and she starts, telling me her story, and I feel comfortable. And so I, out of guilt, seeing this guy be taken to the hospital, I say, I also took some stuff. And
what an earnest kid you are.
Just like the guy at the I'm calling your mom right now. So she goes inside, she calls my mom. I said, you're not doing this. Like, you don't understand. Like, if you tell I'm going to be in so much trouble. And like, you don't have the authority. She's like, I'm doing it. Yeah. So my mom arrives, and as my mom's getting there, I'm like, okay.
What does he mean? Out of guilt, he took stuff? So he took substances from this person's home? Is he trying to allege that he took the substances to remove them from the home? not to do himself. Did I understand that correctly? I've listened to this so many times. The same passage. Help me out, audience. You're sometimes much smarter than I am. Mostly much smarter than I am. Help me out on this one. Did anyone hear that? Was anyone listening? No, it doesn't seem like anyone got it either. But he's like, I took stuff because I felt so guilty.
Hey, Mom, let's try to get out of here. Let's go. Yeah. And she's like, don't you have something to tell your mother? I was seconds away from not being a tragedy, and this stringy-haired bitch, she just says to me, can you please come back here? And so I have to explain to my mom that, you know.
Okay, I'm not trying to villainize drug users, by the way. I'm just trying to highlight some of, Nick Reiner's thinking and rationalizations. And so he blames his friend who OD'd mother for telling his parents. So Maestro says, no, he was saying he admitted taking some himself. So he admitted to his friend's mother to taking some of these substances himself. And they alerted his parents. And his parents, because his friend was inches away from death, think that something terrible might happen to him. And I think there's probably a lot more behind this story unfortunately, he killed the surviving witnesses to this story. Yeah, hey, the great Tony Natale says he sounds so entitled. No kidding, doesn't he? Oh, my Nexium court buddy, Tony Natale. Hey, Tony. Good, my dear friend, Tony Natale.
What had happened, and my mom being a hysterical...
That you were taking pills and your friend fell out.
Yeah, and that I had taken them too. And my mom being a hysterical Jewish mother, she, rushed me to the hospital, blah, blah, blah. It turns out that this kid was already in an outpatient rehab and should have been staying sober, and I didn't know any of that.
Yeah.
And he got sent to this place called Visions.
Yeah.
And to make a long story short,
they sent you there.
I got tricked into getting
Was he there when you went there?
There was two different facilities. We both got sent there. Yeah. And my roommate was a heroin addict. So before I even went to rehab, I had never sniffed coke. I'd only smoked pot. I'd taken ecstasy. I dropped acid. But when I hear for 100,
but I also took a handful of serious prescription drugs. So much so that my friend almost died. But don't mind me. Don't mind me. Are you listening to this, Tony?
26 days, how good shooting up heroin is.
That's what's going to happen.
Every single night, you're going to tell me I'm not going to go out and try heroin?
And this is the origin of...
So you're telling me that I'm not going to go out and try it because someone says it's great? I think, like, how many people in my audience, I would think everybody's going to raise their hand, has heard someone describe some illicit and dangerous drug as the effects being wonderful. Otherwise, they would be the most irrational people to use it, right? If it didn't make you feel good. It would be so irrational. But this guy goes, oh, this is he sees a guy he sees all the consequences. I think what's the key to the story is that it's not that he's just hearing about the effects of it, but he sees the consequences of it. Because I'm sure his roommate also talked about the consequences, all the things he lost because of it. And all he hears is the effects, and he wants to do it. Because let's face it, when you're the son of a famous multimillionaire, maybe he thinks maybe the consequences don't apply to him. And they didn't really. I mean, what you get from this movie is this guy never had a job, but he's always getting money from somewhere. It's really unclear where all this money, he's like staying in hotels, he's doing this, when he says he's homeless, I don't know how much time he actually spent on the street. I mean, they show him in a den of inequity and indulgence, but like once, but he doesn't seem to go sick too often. He always seems to have money.
Why you hate the recovery scene?
Dude, but that's such a common story, though. People go to rehab, and what do you learn?
How to get more up.
Yeah.
And I lasted.
What you're missing?
7 weeks in the outpatient, and I'm not going to blow it for a joint. I'm not going to go back into the inpatient for a joint.
Yeah.
I'm doing something I haven't even done before because this is my only opportunity. And then that's how I try. And so,
wait, it's his only opportunity? I don't see how it's his only opportunity, but okay.
I didn't try heroin until 3 or 4 years later, and this is also funny.
But the seed was planted.
Seed was planted.
Not because of visions, but just because of
visions gave you visions.
Yeah,
that's
good vision.
Funny.
The circuit
vision for you.
One thing led to another, and I went to a wilderness program in Utah, and it was called
Second Nature. I know their marketing.
And I met a kid there from LA, and at the time he was kind of like a hardcore like Venice kid, and I met him that was when I was 16, and then when I was 18 I was in a sober living, and I call him up because I knew he was really into heroin at the time, and he comes and he picks me up, and I've never even smoked heroin, sniffed heroin, nothing.
Yeah.
He takes me to.
So after many rehab, sober living places, wilderness retreat that he's all going to because of what his parents consider, let's say, and you can't, and experts consider him good candidates for these programs. 3 years later, he does the drugs and he blames it on the rehab, not on himself. I mean, this is... Are you everybody hearing what I'm hearing?
Downtown LA.
So he's mad at the industry, and boy, does that... I'm going to have to go through Being Charlie in another episode because it really deserves some commentary. It is so over the top, and the character of Charlie is so unlikable and vapid. Like, he has no personality besides for the fact that he does these drugs. You don't know what he cares about. He's supposed to be a stand-up comedian, but it springs out of nowhere. And he's not particularly funny. The dialogue he's given is not particularly funny until he does stand-up at rehab, and of course gets thrown out of the rehab because of his stand-up, which bashes the staff. Spoiler alert. It's free on YouTube if people want to watch it. But the character that's supposed to be Rob Reiner is running as a politician, former actor, running for, I believe it's Senate. Am I right about that? But some big political office.
We go to Skid Row. He gets. I'm like, what kind of position am I in?
Skid Row is the worst.
Oh no!
I've been in all.
Dude, he's from Southern California. I'm sure he lived on Skid Row.
I'm just saying we should talk about that.
It's the most hardcore of them all.
So I think it's notable that Chris is also very is kind of like saying it's terrible. The cure is worse than the problem. I find that hard to believe. Or the cure makes the problem. I find this whole line of thinking, if this were true, then I don't know. Our addiction rates are rising at rapid rates, but I would think that you would hear more of this story, like rehab threw me into harder substances.
Fifth and Broad, St. Julian down there.
It's insane. And so, but this time I had no idea what was up, so I just stayed in the car. Yeah. And he went out.
You've been staying in the car.
Oh, no, he was like, just look down. And people were like tapping on the window. I was like, what the fuck is going on right now?
My ex used to take me down. She drove a Porsche, and I'd keep her in the car, and I'd have her put her seat back, and I'd come back, and there'd be people surrounding her car, and I'd have to shoo them off.
Dude, every day for 6 years, I would drive to downtown Los Angeles.
To Skid Row?
To Skid Row, to 5th and Broadway.
Oh, yeah, we said that you spit.
Day. They would be spitting piquetes.
Okay. So, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I get, what's his excuse? I mean, if the made him try it, what made him continue it? You know what I mean? I get that you can say, well, the cure made me try this drug, but what made him continue it? We may be talking more about these. There's so much in these dopey podcasts in another episode. Did I miss anything that I wanted to talk about? Let me look at my notes. Hold on one second before I go. Before I go, I want to thank some people who donated. Buy me a coffee. Lucy R. Someone who does not want to be identified. Tammy and Gizzy and Lucy and Susan. I want to thank you all for buying me a coffee and supporting the channel. Appreciate it. Venmo. Thank you, Shelley Flynn, for your donation via Venmo. And thank you, Christina, for becoming a new Patreon member. I appreciate it. You guys keep this channel afloat. Did I miss anything? I don't think so. Not in my notes. That I'm sure if I miss something, we'll be talking about it next time. Does anybody have any questions? He was 32. Yeah. Does anybody have? Yeah. So this is just continues a case that continues to fascinate. I can't wait till it gets into court. So many of the details of this are not in the public domain. I'm very curious about the things I'm most curious about right now are Nick Reiner's criminal history not related to substances. So any history of what the neighbors reported is that he had been violent with the parents before. And you would think that they would create boundaries and realize how that's a red flag. Also, his wrecking the guest room should have been a red flag, wrecking their property, wrecking items that could symbolize them. It's all big red flags to possible greater violence down the road. But also, I'm curious how he's going to plead. He could make a plea deal with I'm sure that's what the prosecution's office wants. I don't think so, but he could make a plea deal with the prosecution for lesser time, just to admitting what he did. But it looks like he's going to fight this. And be prepared for a real media campaign. Is Alan Jackson and the bigger question is who's paying Alan Jackson? And if you missed the beginning of the show, so Marty Tankleff and his murder and conviction for the murder of his adoptive parents, Arlene and Seymour Tankleff, is something that I studied for years and years and years before I did my episode. I looked at every piece of court transcripts, court documents that we could get our hands on in that case. So much of that information is only in the court transcripts and not in the public domain after he hired a PR agent to spin a innocence fraud campaign for him. He used his parents' inheritance. The parents that he killed, so Marty Tankleff, these were his adoptive parents, Arlene and Seymour Tankleff. They used their money to pay for his defense and pay for his PR, the PR representative, Lonnie Surrey, who also represented the West Memphis Three, to spin an innocence fraud narrative for him that is really the predominant narrative you hear if you hear about that case. So I would think that there's nothing legally preventing him unless the family tries to bar him from getting the inheritance legally, from getting that inheritance right now. I would think that's what he would be paid for, but he may be doing it pro bono just for the publicity. We'll see. I'm very curious if that gets disclosed. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great night. I'll be back with more information about the murder of Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle Reiner. Not tomorrow, but Thursday. I'll be back. Have a great night. I'll see you Thursday at 6. Have a great night, everyone. Oh, wait, before I go, please support the channel. I'm such a bad self-promoter. Please support the channel. Venmo, buy me a coffee, Patreon, where you get access to content you won't find anywhere else. Links are in the description of this and every episode. Please hit the thumbs up on your way out, guys. And leave me a comment. I read every single one. Have a great night, everybody.
Mic check, Roberta strides through the static haze. True crime Gotham where the shadows play their plays. Fraudsters fold when a spotlight beams. Fact-focused queen busting propaganda schemes. Glass shatter lies echoes through the streets. Standing for victims, giving voice their beats. NYC pulse, truth sharp as night. Roberta exposing, she's the anti-fraud light. Hard task warrior, dissecting state and defense. Twisted innocence, claims breaking pretense. Gotham's truth seeker cuts clean with the blade. Facts in the forefront, no justice gets swayed. Cold facts drip heavy, real talk unfurls. Cracking cases open like oysters with pearls. Innocence gimmicks crumble to dust in the wind. For victims, her creed, justice till the end. Headphones blazing, she drops heavy artillery. Narratives twisted, meet blunt object civility. Roberta got receipts that unravel the ploy. Exposing the lies these fraudsters deploy. Glass shatters lies, echoes through the streets. Standing for victims, giving voice their beats. NYC pulse, truth sharp as night. Roberta exposing, she's the anti-fraud light.